This person writes this post, why chasing is unhealthy and dangerously self-harming. So they're going through some examples. So let's see if we can agree. Chasing gives an illusion of control. Yeah, that's probably true. So it's like thinking that, constantly talking to each other, or if you can basically get a response, then it means that it's a good relationship. And so you're basically in this equation mindset. I think that's true. That people's opinion on you is within your control. Again, agreed. It's like you should focus on what you can control, like your own perceptions, your own actions, your own questions you ask, your own thought, your own focus, the way you move your body. You start believing that if they did like you, it's because of what you did to convince them to like you. Okay, again, equation mindset. I don't know if that directly relates to chasing as far as that example. Let's check it out. And if they do not like you, it's because of what you did, and that you need to do more to convince them. That is what they're really explaining right here is really the nice guy kind of archetype as far as their mindset going towards a relationship. So they think they have to be something or give something to be liked. And then the solution, if they're not liked, is to basically amp up their effort towards giving. And so they give more and more and more. And when that happens, basically just digs them deeper into a pit. And then you believe if only you had done it differently, you would have gotten a different result. So it seems like this person might have gone through this themselves. Maybe they've learned this stuff and kind of are reflecting back on themselves, or at least someone they know very closely. Hold it right there. It's a trap. This mindset puts a lot of pressure on oneself, pressure for a perfect score. Yeah, thinking that it's perfect. Yeah, this person's actually given some good insights. So they're thinking that if I just be the perfect guy, meaning so if I fit this criteria that's just perfect, then she'll like me. But then what you'll often find is just people aren't perfect. And so people that are trying to be perfect oftentimes are secretive, or sometimes even like lie without them really even processing it themselves as a lie, in order to hide what they perceive as bad. And that causes a lot of problems, really, with how people behave, how people interact with each other. And almost like it's like the other person knows that you're hiding this thing, but it's like you have what's called like a covert contract, meaning like, oh, you need to ignore that and I'll ignore this, and then I'll basically do things for you, and then it'll be like a trade, and then you'll fulfill my needs. And it's just this trading mindset, and love can't really be expressed in like this trading, horse trading, this kind of like, if I give you this, then you'll love me kind of attitude. And this mindset sets up an ecosystem of obsessive and controlling behaviors and patterns. And I think what you're talking about right there is just coming from a place of fear. Every interaction becomes a game of chess, meaning everything's in their head. And one's mind becomes a hyper calculator over analyzing every situation and thinking 3 to 5 virtual moves ahead, if not more. I don't think that's true though. So I don't think that they're actually thinking that far ahead. I don't think they're like, oh, so smart, because that gives you a sense that they're like succeeding, successful at this. Because if you can think you're actually getting into the moment, if you're thinking 3 or 5 steps ahead, and you're actually coming from a place of your heart and really understanding, it comes from a place of understanding if you can think ahead like that in a successful way, versus intellectualizing this whole process is usually in a moment. So they're really just thinking one move. So if I do this, then she'll like me, or she'll kiss me, or she'll do whatever. She'll go back to my place or whatever, thinking you can basically game her into something. Usually that's just one move kind of mindset. And so I would disagree with this person on that point right there. Which, by the way, makes a person very obviously odd and creepy to other people. Yeah, I mean, you get in your head, you're dead. You get in your heart, you're smart. Easy one to remember, just to kind of put you back in that place. Easy way to do that is really focus your breathing on like putting oxygen into your heart. I know it sounds like interesting, but it's like I do that a lot with kind of getting into zone with these videos. It's like if I ever feel out of state, then I'll just like take a deep breath, and then focus on that oxygen going into my heart. And it like somehow it kind of works. It's just like it almost just kind of focuses my attention to our heart, my heart. And when that happens, it's like our heart has our own intelligence. It produces its own emotions. When we're in fetus states, like it's our heart is developed before our brain, and our heart then grows the whole body. So it's like not necessarily, that's probably not totally scientific, but it's like the heart comes first, and it has its own intelligence. Um, it says this creates mental fatigue over time and complete loss of self-worth. Yeah, or sometimes you don't even like want to acknowledge your own feelings. So sometimes it's like, well, you're always giving to the other person because you think that if you just give enough, then your needs will be fulfilled. And then what you do is you don't ever focus on your own needs, or even suppress them, or act like you don't need that you shouldn't have those needs for yourself. Or if she says like you're kind of smothering me, or she communicates something, or this isn't working, sometimes what those kind of that archetype really is to suppress their needs even further, which just makes it more empty and act in ways that kind of basically build up all this resentment, tension, whatever it is kind of hurt. And then really just a lack of taking care of themselves often leads to kind of an explosion of like, oh, I need this, or some kind of like explosion that's totally out of context, or they lose their temper, or things along that line. Yeah, just be careful because it's like that archetype is also thinks that they're basically trying to intellectualize or structure what they think is kind of perfect. How do I navigate this? So thinking that their way is right, and they can basically create the right way in their mind, but really it's like they're still a person. They still make mistakes, even though they're trying to avoid this, or communicate that they don't have any mistakes, or that they are morally just. But oftentimes what you'll find is it's just like the ways that they're creating the situations are basically fantasies. So it's like it's not the reality of the situation, and they won't act in congruence with actually with the reality of what the other person's feeling or what the context calls for, but they're acting in accordance with what they think it should be on what is good and what is bad. Yeah, moreover brings pain, self-loathing, meaningless mindset, because every rejection is taken as a loss. Yeah, I don't know if that totally relates to this archetype, because it's like that's more like a belief, like, hey, how do I interpret this? How do I determine a meaning? And so it's like, do I interpret this as I'm losing out, or I got less, or now I'll never be able to get what I want, or this is harming me, or life always happens to me in this way that just like brings me down? Or are you taking it as, hey, this happened to me, but in crisis there's opportunity, or when there's pain, oftentimes that gives us a driving force to grow and become stronger. Or maybe this person really wasn't meant to be in my life, and this was an opportunity and really a gift from whatever that really guides me further in my life where I really need to go. They say life is full of rejections, and a chasing mindset will take rejection personally and will create a blade out of it. Getting intense here. It feels like stabbing oneself. Yep. It really intense. But that does not stop there. Unfortunately, the chasing mind will look back because it is over analyzing and overthinking, so it will twist that blade 1,000 times a day. So there's got to be some personal kind of background with their description on this in this paragraph here. The reality is we don't have control, and reality hits hard for the chasing mind, proving him wrong time and time again. Yeah, so when we think that reality is another way, is some other way, and then it's actually not that way, we start to suffer because it's like, well, we don't know how to handle these situations. And despite how hard it hits, the chasing mind will resist and prefer to suffer torture rather than accept it. Interesting insight there, because it is true that it's like some people who are like insecure enough sometimes will go through anything and tolerate anything, sometimes to the extent of like massive amounts of pain. They're willing to go through that because it's like it's fueled by that insecurity, and sometimes insecurity can actually get you through that. But it's like, do you really want to live a life where you're just totally in pain all the time and you're just basically tolerating really disempowering or really a painful experience as far as a relationship? Or do you want to find something where you're joyful and happy and fulfilled in a relationship where you don't have to experience all this pain? Yeah, that's something to note for sure. Because Chasing Mind had this one prophecy. Okay, is it is holding on to. Kind of reads like a kind of scholarly kind of thing what they're going on here. That one day everything will be right, that the final 27 moves will land perfectly, and the dream partner will finally fall in love after the masterfully executed plan. Plan of perfection, getting caught up in the myth of the one. You'll find the one for you, instead of just growing your skills and kind of looking at the reality of the situation and realizing that every single person in the world has faults. You don't have to find somebody that's perfect, because there aren't really anyone that's perfect. And having a perfect standard for your life is the lowest standard you have, because it's impossible and it's unattainable, and it causes you to really create these fantasies. Now, I say this and I know how hard it is to change one's perception. Especially these chasing patterns are deeply rooted for many years and maybe from childhood sometimes. Yeah. What they're beyond chasing? Freedom to not play the chess game, to just be, to enjoy. People don't like you. So they're giving like positive reasons why you should get out of this. Well, it's okay. There are billions of people. When I see that one, I don't like it, because it's like, well, it's just a reference as basically justifying where you're at right now, instead of actually making progress and saying, hey, I need to step up my game. I need to basically get better. I need to change. Sometimes when we use that, it's like, oh, well, there's all these people starving, and so I don't really have to change my financial situation. Or, marriage rate, the divorce rate is over 50%. It's like, well, I can just kind of just do what I want, because it's like, it's not like them. It's like, I'm in this relationship. It sucks. But it's like, well, at least all those people, it's like I'm not alone, because all of them have failed. So sometimes we use that kind of excuse to kind of keep us where we're at, when really we need to look at the reality of the situation and sometimes confront that pain and confront that uncertainty. That way we can actually move forward and grow. A lot of them won't like you. Focus on those who like you without you making any gimmick. They like you because you are you, regardless if you mess up or not. How cool is that? Wishing the best to everyone out there chasing. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of things you're saying. Some of it I don't. I think some of it kind of relates to other aspects. I think you seem to have gone through a lot of this, and maybe you had like a wake up call, and that's kind of what it seems like, because you're taking it pretty intensely, pretty seriously as far as this post goes. Referencing the knife analogy and all these analogies that kind of relate to you taking it very seriously. Um, and so that's usually what you'll see. It's like when somebody like is in that chasing mentality and then they get out of it. Initially, sometimes they take it to the extreme, and sometimes that's how we learn. And what we'll find is like once we take it to the other extreme, and then it's like we live in that other extreme for a while, then we kind of settle down and then kind of get back to the middle. It's kind of like overcorrecting in like driving a boat. So it's like if you're driving a boat, sometimes you have to like shift over, and so it's like you shift too much, and that way the water just kind of flows you away, and then you adjust again, and then you're kind of on track as far as going straight when you need to turn in the water like that. Kind of same situation. Sometimes we do overdo it as far as how serious we're taking it. But I think you are on the right track, or at least you have made this starting point where you can recognize, what chasing does. You didn't mention anything on why it affects her, or how it affects her when you as the man are chasing. Oftentimes it's just conveyed as more of like a feminine quality, versus you being on your mission, her joining you on your mission. And when you communicate in ways that are like sometimes perceived as more like weak ways, she sometimes struggles with trusting you as a strong leader. When this happens, she doesn't totally feel safe, not necessarily with you yourself, but just the vibe that she gets kind of around you, and feel safe that you will lead her to really, well, yeah, lead the relationship, really lead your life. And then it kind of is a blanket over the whole family, as far as, taking care. But I would, yeah, I mean, I commend you for, there's a lot of points that you did point out that, I also perceive as true. And so I commend you for, it probably took some work, took some going through, took some pain to kind of get to that point to finally make the decision to change. And so you did that, and that's excellent. And everything really starts from that awareness, and then you can kind of grow, and then adjust accordingly. And it is a process. Sometimes it takes time. It takes a lot of work. But when you do it, it's like when you shift your life, you'll understand really getting closer to that reality. You talked about that a lot, on just not being in the reality of the situation, just kind of projecting, intellectualizing the process. And when you can finally start to work on yourself in these ways, it's really just about kind of getting back to that understanding, or that, understanding the reality of the situation. And then once you do that, then you can kind of act in a way that really supports the relationship.